My very first Final Fantasy was Final Fantasy XVI. I obviously knew about Final Fantasy for a long time, but it's 16, which is a game I loved that has inspired me to take a deeper plunge into the franchise. Well, if we're to be fully fair, Final Fantasy XVI is the second Final Fantasy I have ever played, but it's the first I was actually properly engaged with. I have vague memories of trying out in the very late 90s Final Fantasy VI, at the time known in the West as Final Fantasy III, on PC through emulation, because once again, there was no SNES in Moldova, so basically no other way to try the game, but at the time, I didn't really get invested. But now, thanks to Final Fantasy XVI, I got more interested in the franchise. I have actually already tried some other games from the series even before starting to make this ranking, but we'll get to them later. Now, it's time to talk about the very first Final Fantasy, which I haven't played yet until now. Like other old school RPGs we have discussed, Ultima 1, Wizardry 1, Final Fantasy 1 is less about any specific plot per se, and more about the feeling of progression. You have a party that keeps getting stronger, and you have a playing field that keeps getting bigger. That last part, I have to say, is done exceptionally well. First we've got access only to a small section of the land, then a bridge is repaired and we can visit more of the continent, then we get a ship but are limited to a sea surrounded by landmass. However, after completing various tasks, a canal is created that connects us to the ocean and so on. From a purely structural perspective, I think Final Fantasy I is set up in a really smart way. But it's not a game that I find particularly compelling long term. Okay, so my first party consisted of a fighter, a black belt, a black mage, and a white mage. And in Final Fantasy, the party you create at the beginning is one you have to take through the entire game. I figured that should be a pretty balanced configuration. Somebody to take damage, somebody to deal damage, somebody for offensive spells, and somebody for healing and defensive spells. In theory, it works well enough. However, first, spells work here like in D&D and Wizardry, with a limited amount of spell slots per spell level that get replenished only while resting in the inn, which in Final Fantasy also doubles as saving. And look, I didn't get too far in with my first party, but far enough to notice that there's too many random enemies in comparison to the limited amount of spell slots my characters had. I constantly had to save them for more opportune situations, which meant that for the most part, my mages acted as weak as fighters. Black Belt dealt a lot of damage, but he was really easy to kill. The only constantly effective party member I had, and the one that died the least and therefore leveled up the most, was my fighter. And honestly, it was very annoying because I felt like I couldn't really do much in battles and they in time started feeling like a slog. But then I thought, are fighters just OP? What happens if I make 4 of them? And holy shit! I restarted the game and created a party consistent of just 4 fighters, and I was just steamrolling through the game. I don't know, maybe somewhere very late or at the very end having 4 fighters becomes an awful idea. I'll be honest, I didn't finish Final Fantasy I and at this point don't plan to, at least not the original NES version. I dropped the game sometime after getting the airship. I have just blasted through all the content my previous seemingly balanced party constantly struggled to go through and went far, far beyond their wildest imaginations. And I was just rolling in money and equipment, even though you'd think equipment for fighters is going to be expensive because usually they need the costliest armor and weapons, but also you sell your older gear, so it didn't seem that bad. And strategy to just hit everyone until they die worked perfectly. Yeah, you've got to pick up a bunch of healing potions and antidotes, but it's not that big of a deal. Because, look, there was a boss that has a spell which can just outright KO a party member. Now, you'd think that this boss is one that requires smart strategy, increasing evasion of your party members, silencing the boss, you know, some thinking. Nah, just fucking hit him in the head. Yeah, one of my fighters got KO'd in the process, but the rest have beat the shit out of that boss before anything else happened. That's also why I eventually got bored. Final Fantasy I is largely about combat. Yeah, there is a pretty basic story in place, there's quests, mostly fetch ones intended to lead you from location to location, there is some exploration as you uncover new areas, but at the end of the day it all resorts to leveling your party up and fighting monsters. With a team of 4 fighters, defeating a variety of monsters and even a bunch of bosses was easy, but also really boring. So it felt like I kinda broke the game for myself there. But also when I was playing as what seemed like a more balanced party, and heck, I noticed later that party configuration was recommended in the manual, it felt sluggish too because I couldn't consistently use everyone's abilities to the fullest. So yeah, when the world really opened up with the airship, at that point it just felt like I couldn't be bothered to keep going. And it's a pity because honestly, I think Final Fantasy, while being simple in plot and structure and progression, manages to succeed anyway in that regard. It's engaging enough conceptually. But the balance, yeah, leaves much to be desired, sadly. Still, I will place Final Fantasy I above Sokoban and Kid Icarus. While Final Fantasy involves a lot of grind, the structure overall is properly designed around that fact, and the core gameplay feels like it could be pretty engaging if not for the broken balance. So the nugget of what I'd be able to really enjoy is there, and that pushed me far enough within the campaign, but considering that the choices of playstyle I've seen laid out before me were either a boring dominant strategy or an ineffective theoretically balanced party, yeah, I don't think I can place Final Fantasy higher.